Bryan from Airflow Music here once again. Welcome back. This is day 3 of our Farrago into 2021. How's your daily shedding going so far? We're back again with the next 2 keys in this set of scales. That's going to be the written keys of A flat and D flat major today. So we're getting into the weeds a little bit. Couple of things to address about these just from what I've seen in the comments. First thing is, in some ways this is a tricky set to play, but it's not actually that complicated. You may be, less familiar with breaking scales into modes and things like that than other things you may have practiced, but that's okay. That's why we need to practice these things, to get them familiar. Okay? Don't worry about the range. Don't get scared off by the fact that notes seem to be going high. If, as I've said at different points in the videos, and I'll say it a little earlier this time, if you find that subsequent lines, particularly in the later modes of each key, getting a little high for your comfortable range, take that line down the octave. This is more about learning your scales. By my reckoning, if you do that judiciously, the highest note you need to be able to play everything on these pages is a G sharp at the top of the staff. Right sitting on top of the staff there. If you take everything down the octave as it goes, as necessary, then that's where you can, top out at and still get all of these done. Also, don't worry too much about the car tonguing. We're putting that independently to help us get familiar with it. As you can hear, and this leads into my other point, I don't sound so great doing the independent car tongue. That's why I'm practicing it. And that is the other point. I'm recording these in the course of my practicing the set every day this week. Okay? So I'm taking the 2 keys that I'm using for the video that day and I'm putting the camera on myself for those. I'm just practicing the rest of the time. You'll see me fade from take to take from time to time if I really screwed something up, but basically these are all complete takes and I'm just going straight through. So I'm kind of giving myself more points for keeping going rather than stopping if I make a mistake. You can do it both ways, but for right now that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to get through and keep going and make it from beginning to end, because it's about more than the notes or the articulations or this, that and the other. It's a combination of all those things. But also, if I stop every time I make a mistake, I'd never get any single piece of music played ever in my life. So, I do go back and address things when the camera is off and practice the things that I need to practice. The other point about this is that even though this is a set of scales or scale workout that I've used before, I've never practiced it before with this particular set of articulations, at least as far as I remember. Doing it with the 4 repeats on each thing and slurring, tonguing, car tonguing and double tonguing. I've done subsets of those before, but I don't think I've ever done it in exactly this way. So that's the main thing that you'll see hangs me up, is remembering which articulation I'm on and keeping everything nice and clean and tidy. I'm getting better every day. I hope I'm getting better every day. I guess we'll find out when you see the exercises in a minute. But generally, that's what I'm going for. I know my scales pretty well, partly because I've practiced this and other exercises before. So I'm not usually too worried about what the notes are. Sometimes a particular sequence, particularly in the arpeggiations, can be tricky, but use this as an opportunity to get familiar with your scales so you're not too put off by the fact of being in the key of A flat or D flat like we will be today. Okay, so with that, I hope that clears up any questions. If there are any other questions about this or comments or whatever, please leave them below. Alright, for today let's get into it. The metronome's going at 100 beats a minute again. And yeah, let's get this thing done. Okay, so that's the A flat major in the books. Didn't feel like I was too bad on this one. There's the occasional flugged note here and there, the occasional crack, and the occasional misarticulation. I got confused where I was up to. I know at the end of the G. Locrian, I think it was, that I kept slurring longer than I needed to at some point. But more importantly, I kind of kept going and didn't let it derail me. I was able to make the adjustment midstream and and switch. It's not ideal. It's something I need to keep an eye on when I'm practicing it again tomorrow. But for right now, I'm taking it and I'm moving forward. Okay, so let's move on and get to the D flat major. Okay, so that's D flat done. Yeah, not too bad. There's some moments in there, but you know, these are two of the trickier keys we're going to run into across the course of this 6 days that we play this exercise. And you know, certainly A flat and D flat aren't necessarily our favourite keys as trumpet players, but I want you to remember that there's nothing really inherently more difficult about playing in those keys. It's just that they may be less familiar. So fingers are still got to go down, the sounds are still going to be largely the same in terms of how the intervals move and the sequence. So, you know, if you don't know these keys so well, then double down your efforts on getting them right. Like I said in the intro, I'm pretty good with certainly my major scales. We'll see how I get on with some of the other scale types as we get there. But you know, there's particular sequences in different things that will throw me off, but that's why it's good to practice these things. Part of it is redeveloping key familiarity. And, you know, don't worry too much about the fact that they're modes. I've listed what the names of the modes are and things like that, so if that's interesting or important to you, then it'll keep you on track with that. But if it's not, it doesn't matter. Basically, a mode is just the same scale played between two different start and end notes, you know, rather than starting and ending on the root. So, you know, it's not too much more complicated than that. I know they've got funny names and, you know, that kind of thing. It's a major scale. You know, it's the kind of thing we need to be relatively familiar with. Okay, so, let me know how you're getting on with this. How you liked playing in A flat and D flat. We've got even more fun tomorrow. It's going to be F sharp and B, if memory serves, tomorrow. That should be entertaining. And we'll really be in the low notes, so there should be no complaints about the range. Okay? So, have fun doing these. Leave any comments that you may have. If you're enjoying these videos, please do hit that like button. It does make a big difference to how YouTube and the world in general views these videos and whether they get to. So I'd appreciate it. And if you're enjoying these videos in general, please subscribe to the channel for more. Okay? In the meantime, I'm going to go back and practice the rest of these keys. And I suggest you do the same. So, I'll see you on the next one. And until then, go practice.